Good evening and welcome to EDA Monday Night Series. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Karamjit Gill, who's here from the University of Brighton. Professor Gill is a founder. He's a founding director of the SEEK Research Unit at the University of Brighton. He's an honorary professor of human-centered systems at the University of Urbino. He also founded AI&Society, which is a journal that goes beyond AI and society and actually sometimes introduces artists like myself. And he is a founding series editor of human-centered systems. I actually have a couple of books that Karamjit Gill edited here. You're welcome to take a look. And I think you'll find his talk very interesting and relevant to technology from a human-centered point of view. The title of the talk is Human-Machine Symbiosis, Colonic Worlds and the Artificial Landscape, towards the human-centered shaping of the interface paradigm. Please help me welcome Karamjit Gill.
I think I'll just go straight to these slides. Ah, right.
So it's this button.
And then in order to go back to...
That's back. Forward and back.
No. Go back to this.
Okay, so if you go back to 0,
I think I just...
Oh, just turn it off right here, Bing, and then I'll help you. There's a button there. Just tell me when you want to switch back. I'll do it for you.
All right. Okay. Sorry, I got cough and cold, so please bear with me. It's nice to be here, and I think the reason I'm here is because of Victoria. And just coincidence of life, she was in Brighton about 6 months ago and dropped in. And we started talking about her work. And I talked about my work. And she's then invited me down here. Now, I think I'll go, yes, I have to get used to this idea. Now, here I am. This is the story of my life. Human-machine symbiosis basically is the result of the European debate on human-machine relationship, not in computational terms, not in computer terms, but in social and cultural terms. I'll come back to this. So what I did was, after 15 years of debate in Europe, I sat down and synthesized that debate, just so that people don't forget about it. AI&Society journal was launched in 1987, and there's also a historical background. And I think those people who know about London and who perhaps for one reason or the other keep track of the election of the mayor of London? Anybody? No. History. In 1983, for the first time in British history, the Council of London became Labour Council. Now, Labour in your sense will be Socialist Council. That was the first time in the history of Britain. Now, we had Thatcher as the Prime Minister. She could not understand why people will select or elect a Socialist council in the heart of the capitalist city. So she voted to abolish it. It took her about 6 years to abolish it. The reason she abolished it, because the first time the scientists, the trade unions, the corporate movements, hospitals, universities in London got together and formed network to focus on socially useful technologies. And that was anathema to anybody who want to promote the individualized market forces of research. Now, it was abolished. The procedure of abolishing started in 1983, and it was completed in 1987. I had my secondment, after some year you get sabbatical. I had a year of sabbatical available to me, and I asked my university to send me to the Greater London Council when it was on its dying days. I wanted to capture the history, how people from universities, medical colleges, corporate movements, trade unions, industries all get together to set up network for socially useful technology. What do they mean by that? So I spent a year recording the dying history of the first ever socialist experiment at the largest scale. And when everybody left, Germans left, the Americans left, the Canadians left, they all came, the socialist entrepreneurs, in order to join the greatest experiment. And I said, look, this history will be lost. Being a computer scientist, I'm very naive. Computer scientists are normally less agreed. Basically, we are concerned with machines or programming, or we think the world runs around the machine. So I said, well, to preserve the history, I should start a journal which keeps it alive. Nobody will fund me. Nobody will accept. The title AI and Society. All the American publishers said to me, they will accept to fund the journal if I don't have the word society in it. Remember, in 1980s, the word society was not mentioned in Britain. Those people who perhaps know about it, the Thatcher, as Prime Minister, said in her speech, there is no such thing as society, there are only individuals. No academic in Britain who wanted jobs could dare to use the word society. And I said, I can do it. I have nothing to lose. If you have nothing to lose, you can do things. All the big professors have everything to lose. Established researchers have everything to lose because they depend upon funding. So I then convinced the German publishers, blackmailed them, and I said, look, this is your moral responsibility to fund this journal with this title as it is. And they said to me, yes, they will fund it, provided they don't have any responsibility about editorial, about the content. You do it, and we'll just pay for it. But please don't bother us to defend it. So that's why this journal. Its name is AI and Society for very historical reason, because AI was the dominant technology. And we wanted to shape the dominant technology for socially useful purposes. If the dominant technology does not have any contribution to make to society, then it has no role whatsoever in academic research. That was our thesis. People didn't believe it, it's their privilege. But we believe it is our privilege. Then, of course, artificial intelligence for society was another. I then organized a conference of great and good in Brighton to launch this whole movement of artificial intelligence for society. It was heavily subscribed from all over Europe, and we published a book in order to mark that history of starting something in Brighton. Now, of course, this was Information Society, another conference. As you know, Information Society has been launched in every country. The focus is different. European focus, or focus of the European Commission, research was first technological. Now it's very much social and cultural under the information society. So we wanted to promote the idea of information society as a social, cultural, economical focus rather than pure technological focus. So that was this, and now this is basically, they're not edited book as such. They're historical events. So I'm not academic in the tradition that I have something to say about the topic or subject. I have nothing to say. But I have to say about the movements, the social movements, which at various stages in Britain or in Europe came along and said, hang on, stop. Reflect on it. Slow down. There's no point rushing it. So put a stop. And that has been the purpose of mine in life and purpose of all the friends who joined together in various countries to always ask people to stop. Put their Macintoshes and IBM laptops in boxes for a month and see whether anything will happen to them. Nothing will change. What is it important? People will come and tell you. And exactly the same reason, I was watching, I had 1 hour and went back and lie down and switch on CNN, and there was a news about I love you, whatever it is, email. And there comes the question of who designed this software? Why do we design this software which automates everything? Why do you have to speed? What is it that makes the scientists to automate all the complex systems? If you think about, if you slow down this automation and put human in the loop at various stages, which not only slows down the transfer of information, it also enables people to reflect on the information. So if you have humans in the loop, it will be very difficult for anybody to hijack, because humans by nature are uncertain, ambiguous, reflective, sleep. So we have to think about that. And that is the responsibility of the designers. Why we design machines? Why do we design systems? Why do we automate? Where is the human? Is it possible for us to keep the human in the loop all the time? Right, that is basically, now I have to go forward. Right. That's Victoria talked about SEEK Center. Now SEEK is social and educational applications of knowledge engineering. But it has another meaning. SEEK, a word from Sanskrit, is sheesh. Sheesh is a learner. The job of the learner is to see through eyes and hear through ears. When you see through the eyes, you see an object. And that's what our problem is. We are so used to seeing the world, and as we see it, we see the object, and those objects represent the reality of the world we see it. Now, if you then say, okay, hang on, if you're seeing something, are you also hearing it? So when you actually try to move from seeing the object, seeing the world as a reality, and trying to model the world as you see it, does everybody see with the same eyes? That's the first question. And if, for example, we as a group see with the same eyes, can we hear it? Can we sense it? Now the beauty is, when you try to hear it, you listen to it. When you listen to it, you understand it. You understand what is behind it, what makes it tick. So you, in fact, seeing and hearing are two tools which we should use. And that's what the artists, musicians, even architects, philosophers, and people in the theater. And that's what interested me as a computer scientist, to learn from the musicians, to learn from the artists, to learn from the people who work in the theater, how the dialogue takes place, how they see the world, how they hear the world. So basically, I was very interested in 81 to set up a project which had all the facets. So I asked for funding, and I was given funding to appoint 25 researchers for 5 years. And I proposed the research should be such that there will be musicians, but all the people who are not academics. I put forward the condition that I would like to receive funding to appoint people who have not academic, they are not researchers, they are people from the street. So I had people, I went to unemployed centers and selected some people who sat on the street and used to play flute, guitars in Brighton. I found wonderful nurses who are retired on the team. I found the linguists who were unemployed, appointed them, psychologists. Got them together and said, look, hang on, there's no agenda. The only agenda really is, can we create something all together? A museum piece, an art, music. Can we use technology? So what we said, okay, we had a brainstorming session, we came up with the name. Name was Computer Aided Animated Arts Theatre, 1981. Computer Aided Animated Arts Theatre. We had 250 children, 15 teachers, 25 researchers, a studio given to us. We became part of Brighton Festival. It's one of the biggest festivals in Britain. And we got whole of our county, if you think about the British counties, all the art schools involved with us. The idea was the researchers will work with children in art school, and the children will look around the world and design pictures, design stories, articulate, and artists will sit down to draw, and we will then animate. That animation will produce films. So we then brought the children to become film producers, to use the studios. It sounds very simple. It was one of the wonderful stories. You have people who are playing guitars in the research, all the orange juices, playing with balloon with children, in the exhibition, promotion of the project. So this was something. Then MIT gave us free, they sent us free speech synthesis, speech recognition system. A company sent us free robots. Japanese television came along and gave us money. And the British newspapers got hold of the stories, so raised huge amount of money. So basically, we had a sort of, as part of a team on the floor, children will use the robot's arm and speech synthesis, speech recognition system. Then they will play, go to the library, get the books on art, they will draw, other people will sit, use that drawing in order to animate. So it was, in a way, a multimedia interactive art. It's 1981. The university did not have any speech system. My own university did not have any course on this. We were the only one who were pioneering. Why? Because we let people come together. reflect on it, and see whether we can actually use this technology. Which, remember, in those days we have Apple, small computer. So then I just thought, well, okay, how do you take this work further? How do you disseminate? How do you attract people? So I suggested to the university that I would like to propose to set up a center which has no funding, which has no physical identity, but it is a center without walls. It's only a center which humans get together, people get together, individuals, and they have meetings, and they write and publish. The university, first of all, thought that's a crazy idea. Normally, every center should have funds. But at the end, they accepted the idea, and I accepted £1 from the university as a basis to set up a established center. So this became a part of a movement, not committed to any subject area, but committed to people who are working in socially useful technologies. I think, which one is it? So anyway, I've talked enough, and I think just, oh, this is sort of, I just want to show you the people. Now, here, my colleague, he has written a book, Architect or Be, The Human Price of Technology, one of the most wonderful books. Do you want to be an architect of history? Or you want to behave like an automaton as a bee? And he put forward this challenge to computer scientists. It's your choice. Make your choice. And this book is readable. So we got together in Brighton to launch. Now that was the British newspaper Guardian. In those days, they wrote an article about me, diametrically opposed whether automation is dehumanizing. So basically, it was my work, and we started a debate about me, saying that, is technology dehumanizing? My answer was yes. So there was a huge sort of fury about it, but there you are. That was the, now I want to go back to my slides, please. So this is basically my history, how I started. And I come from India. I've been in England for 36 years. Spent my youth, did MSc in computer sciences, PhD in AI, became lecturer in artificial intelligence. The rest is just a history. And we go through the history now. Now I think I have to get on to this. It was working. Yeah. Oh, it's coming, it's coming. Yes, that's right. Yes, I carry on. I carry on. No, I finished with that. Now, I think where I'm going to start my lecture basically is the human. So remember, the title of my lecture was Human-Machine Symbiosis. Or the culture of the artificial. Sorry, I forgot the title of my lecture. Is it okay? Anyway, we just carry on. So, by the way, this was what the children used to do. So just you see small children in schools used to draw these diagrams. And this was butterfly, so they made the legs. In those days, we didn't have the software to make animation. We had to do by hand. And we organized our local newspapers to have a competition and give prizes to children, which is community work. Anyway, basically we now wondering about our technology, but there you are. This is the first time, actually, I'm going to use this one. Right.
It's automatically going to sleep, Karamjit.
Because
And it's a machine.
that's right. And that's wonderful, isn't it? Yes, that's wonderful. Rebelling against its use. Yes, that's right. Wonderful. So I think let them sort it out. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, it's coming.
I think once you use it, it won't.
Okay.
It may be related to going.
Yeah. Okay. This now we go.
View down to the bottom down.
Yeah, that's right.
Now go view full slideshow.
Okay.
So I'll go off with this first.
Oh, wonderful. So, that's right. Now, human-machine symbiosis, colonic words, and artificial landscape. Now, there are keywords. Now, human-machine symbiosis, I will explain. Colonic words, holons, I'll come to that. Holon is basically single is whole, and whole is single. One can't exist without the group in society. That's notion. Human-machine symbiosis, there's always had to symbiosis of the objective and subjective, objective and the tacit. And human-machine symbiosis means that we can use the capacity of the machine and capabilities of the humans at the same time. And we can look at the commonality where the machine can benefit society or the human, where the human keep control of that. So that's the meaning of the human machine. Artificial landscapes. That comes from the people's interest now in creating the artificial landscapes. But I come from a different direction. I come from an Italian concept of the artificial, which is culture of the artificial. In other words, whenever two cultures meet, when the object and subject meet, when the machines and the human meet, when we have interdisciplinary research, we have to leave our domains and create a thirdness. We have to create a third culture. And only by moving to third culture, we can come together, we can share. But we always can go back to our cultures. So we can keep the diversity, but we can share. Not at the cost of denying the diversity. Not at the cost of denying the machine or the human. And that is because I'm also an honorary professor in Italy. And I love Italy, and I'm used to and get excited about the idea of culture of the artificial, which is a very Italian concept. Oh, God. It hasn't gone to sleep again, has it? Okay. Now, here I want to come to the idea of human-centered tradition. Now, I call it the European tradition of human-centeredness, because it's not really, it's only European. You may be able to see something in it, but in 1970s, there was rationalization in Britain because of industrial decline. A lot of unemployment was created, and the people, designers, scientists, engineers who became unemployed came together and joined themselves in a movement called Lucas shop steward combined, because people from Lucas Industries. And they put forward the idea to the Labour government in those days, look, we have the talent, we have the expertise, we have the ingenuity. Could the Labour government fund a center which will look at the design of technology which are socially useful for developing countries, for health purposes, for handicapped people, and the Labour government, the socialist government declined. So this movement then became very big with the trade unions, and the consequence was the Sweden the students and researchers with trade unions started a movement called humanization of work and science, and consequence was to set up a center which was Center for Working Life. Swedish Center for Working Life is one of the pioneer centers in Europe which looks at the relationship of work, science and technology. It's worth visiting. It's not the same. And the Denmark, basically, and Norway have another tradition that all the intellectual resources are collective. They're for society. There was a huge student movement in the 70s, which then was known as the collective research movement. And Germany set up the biggest ever research program. 100 major research projects in Germany in 1970s under the umbrella of humanization and work and technology. And that was the basis of the German reindustrialization. So it has a huge impact in Europe. And consequence was the European Commission. Does everybody know what the European Commission is? Okay. If you know that it's the so we call it the government of 15 countries which now funds the research. And the European Commission accepted our proposal to set up a special program at European level under the umbrella of human-centered systems. It was then termed as anthropocentric systems and technology. It became one of the biggest movements funded by the European Commission. Huge amount of money, millions of dollars for 7 years to affect these technological research in Europe. And it has such an impact that almost all the European Commission funded projects, whether in technology, whether in biotechnology, whether in environment, whether in development, they all have to subscribe the socially useful technology. They have to sign, they have to declare. It has a very big impact. Started with a few people, it has become part of the system now. In 1998, the European Commission funded the research for us to set up links with Japan, and of course people from the United States, especially Stanford and other places, were invited to join in. Australian joined in, and India was invited to join in. But it remained basically a European movement. Now, European Commission, we put forward the proposal that we now have to look at the whole issue of cross-cultural interfacing, cross-cultural communication because of the information society. And this is the first project, a major program which the European Commission is funding with India. The only country outside the European Union which has got this funding for this specific project is EU Cross-Cultural Cooperation Program. And I'm coordinating the first pilot program, which is called EU-India Cross-Cultural Innovation. The whole idea was that how do cultures communicate? How do we design interfaces? Could human be part of the loop of the interface? Or could we actually just depend upon the web technology or internet? What is that we have to do? So the question arose that if we are going to understand the role of technology with other cultures, we have to understand those cultures. How do you understand other cultures? You have to do some serious research, you have to collaborate. So this is a program not to do research for India, but involve the Indian researchers and European researchers, not just researchers. Link the researchers with the enterprises, NGOs, women groups, and media. So all three components are involved to see what interaction takes place, how the knowledge is transferred, how communication takes place. No one, just answers. We raise answers. There's raise questions. Answers up to the young scientist to find. So next one, please. Now, here we are. That's how the problem arose. That's what the title of my talk. If you look at here, Brighton, I think I can have something to. So Brighton, where I am, Delhi, University at the here. Now there are two coordinating centers. Then you have Bologna in Italy, Wales, and Brighton in the middle. Then Delhi University and National Institute of Science and Technology in Delhi. So you have this group of people working on information and media technology and its role in society. You have other group, Lyngby in Denmark, Bologna in Italy, Aachen University in Germany, Delhi is coordinating, Gujarat state, which is center of India, and you have Punjab state, which is north of India. Yeah, wonderful.
When you're pointing to these places, are you pointing to specific people or institutions?
Well, basically, the way we started the setup was to find the people. You know, institutions by definition are conservative. They have to be conservative. They have to be defensive. They cannot go beyond their boundaries, whatever reasons. We have to find exciting people within the institutions who could also work within the institutions, outside the institutions. That's the first thing. Second thing was to find countries in Europe where are different traditions, like German tradition, the Danish tradition, and Italian tradition. Geographically different, culturally different, socially different, even intellectually different. So our purpose was not to actually think about interdisciplinary terms, sociology and computer science. This is the traditional way of looking into discipline. This was much more at the regional diversity, a cultural diversity, diversity of people. So you have Delhi in the middle, Punjab in the north. I don't know, you have a lot of Punjabis here. Punjabi, by definition, are individual entrepreneurs and not cooperating. They don't cooperate. This is not a culture of cooperation of Punjabis. Gujarat, where Mahatma Gandhi started his movement of independence, is Patels, you must have heard here, all over the place. And if you know Patel, you know they are innovative. They are network people. So I was very interested to see how the networking culture in India and the individual culture in India can collaborate. That's India. But through the center in Delhi, and again, interest how the Italians, the Germans, the British, the Danes can collaborate. And then collaboration between Europeans and the Indians. Now each university have 10 enterprises linked with this. Each university have the television, newspapers, radio in their areas linked with that. So they're all part of the research team. Now that is basically shared spaces and shared knowledge. How do you do it? If you're designing technology, multimedia technology, interfaces, how do you do it? What is the problem? Is there a problem? The whole project is about to finding the problem. You see, if you look at the Anglo-Saxon scientific culture or culture of computer science is problem-solving culture. You have a problem, you bang, solve the problem, end of story. Italians, on the other hand, is not problem-solving culture. It's problem-finding culture. It's nothing to do with, there is no problem. If you can discover what the problem is, the process of discovering the problem is the solution to the problem. So basically, we start with this idea. If we start discovering what the interface problem is, the very discovery what the problem is will lead us to the solution to that problem. So we have turned the whole research project in the idea of finding the problem. And when people ask me for the solution, we are not interested in solution. Could you please help us to find what the problem is?
What about pre-existing problems?
They are part of finding the problem, because if you don't know the history, you can't explore what the problem is. So that leads you to look at the history of cognitive science, history of human-computer interaction, history of collaborative working, history of design, history of music, history of art, history of philosophy. And then you have researchers who come from these backgrounds. So you involve in that direction. Now we have an added problem. I have just been to China on behalf of the European Commission, because Chinese government Academy of Social Sciences have asked the European Commission to see whether they can set up similar program for China. So I spent 10 days in China, Shanghai and Beijing with meetings, and we are hopeful that somehow or the other we will be able, the European Commission will be able to support that. So we have links with China. There's a link with America, Latin America, because European Commission has a huge program with Brazil and other countries, and they're part of our network. And Japan, I have been also part of the higher education delegation of the European Commission for the last 10 years to look at collaboration in research. So we have Japan. So basically you can see the complexity of the collaboration, cooperation, and we still want to use technology. Then if you have the Japanese culture, you have the Chinese culture, the Latin American culture as part of that, how the hell are we going to start thinking about what the problem is, let alone finding solutions? But I tell you that if you have visited computer scientists, they will say there's no problem, we can solve the problem. It's next one, please. Right. Here is the crux of the problem. Now that is basically happened because on Friday I took my plane from London via Montreal to go to Quebec. I arrived in the evening in Quebec. I wanted to see the history in making. To me, it was to go to that place where the ships from Spain arrived and the whole history of Canada and in America. So I wanted to just walk around and see the history in making. And then I went to give a talk. In the plane, I think I sort of, what I observed was, there was a Canadian aeroplane, Air Canada, a democratic society, and what I sensed was, there was immediately a reminder to you that you are not in the business class, which has never happened to me. I'm traveling to all over the world, not North America, but only Europe and other. You are never reminded that you are you're not in the business class. And the separation between the executive class was absolutely unbelievable. Food, curtains, behavior of these stools, fine. I just couldn't believe it. I should have been, I was warned to expect it, but I didn't. I went to Montreal. I asked somebody, what should I do? Oh, you have to take your luggage, go through the custom. I did. Then you see the customs. What you see? You're about 10 people, security people, who are asking you questions. There are another 15 people who are actually customs people asking you to go through this. And what happened at the end, there's one single line of people going through customs. I had 25 minutes to catch my next flight. I did ask the people, no, you have to go. Now, what is this culture? You have 25 people there, but only one line to go. There's no customs to check, bags have been checked. So I started thinking about, why? Why does it happen in a culture which is democratic, wealthy, which is huge knowledge and expertise, they believe in knowledge society? What on earth is going on? That was not another story. When I went out, I looked around, where should I go? There was no sign. There was no information desk. What should you do when you want to go to CUPP? Is there anybody around? I looked around. On my watch, 7 minutes. At the end, I had to rush, leave my luggage, go to the taxi people, say, how do you actually, where is the flight information? He said, this is there. Is it marked? No. Now, I started thinking about, what is this information society? Am I in sort of pre-developed world, or am I in the most developed world? Am I a world where the computer scientist is Silicon Valley is part of that? Or am I in the bazaar where nobody knows what it is? So then I started thinking, maybe it's the artificial culture. Maybe that's what's happening. Nobody is thinking about the humans. We are all customers. We are dictated by one proposition. That's the economic proposition. And of course, the story back up to here is interesting. But I just sat down and in Quebec and I said, okay, why is it? So I started drawing the diagrams just to understand myself. Why the most efficient machine cannot see the passenger as a human, cannot see the passenger in the plane as a human, cannot see the passenger going through the narrow one lane through the customs as human, cannot see the humans need information. What is it? So I said, okay, what do I know? I've lived in Britain 36 years, in Europe. So I said, maybe I look at the culture. Let's go back to traditions. Trinity. You all know that? I know that. Then I said, what do we know about India? Well, the only thing I know about India, there is everything to do with 5. The old historical village council are 5 members, which has been implemented. Most of the organizations are based on 5. So there must be something if I can represent Indian cultures by 5. And of course, Japan, I've spent some time, these samurais, 7 samurais. Remember, you can't become samurais until you kill the other samurai. To exist as a samurai, you have to be part of that community of samurais. Sorry, 15 minutes. Okay. Then, of course, Chinese, 9 dragons. Now, if you look at here, if you get rid of this right-hand side, just have 2 circles. That's the most efficient machine, most efficient system, direct links. To me, what the computer scientists are all about. When they talk about human-computer interaction, that's what they talk about, human and computer. If you talk about the economic system, this is the most efficient economic system. But if you then add the third one, it causes a problem. You have to have 2 agree, 2 of the holons agree, and third may disagree or agree. If one disagrees, the third agrees with one of them, then you have a democratic principle. You now have a methodology of design, a framework of design of computer system, human machine systems. You choose your bit. The computer scientists have chosen 1-to-1. Now, if you look at India, so 5. Now, there is these two agree, these two agree. But that's not enough. The 5th one has to be either agree with that part. If these two agree and there's a disagreement with this lot and this lot, then the 5th comes along. There's an added complexity, added slowdown to both the system and its design and the social system. But if you look at the Japanese, that's even more complex. Different layers of consensus. It's a slow process, ununderstandable to other cultures. People get very angry with Japanese. Why the hell they can't do things as we do? They can't do it. They have to go through this process. If you look at the Chinese, even more complex. People go and invest money and they get angry. Why the Chinese don't allow us to invest money? What's wrong with them? Why can't they move? But you have to think, how can they move? Until basically you say, okay, let's get rid of this one, let's get rid of this, let's get rid of it. And what we do? To make everybody as Trinity. And then get rid of Trinity, make everybody 2 circles. Now that's the debate of globalization. And that's the misunderstanding of cultures. And that's at the heart of designing cross-cultural interfaces. That's why the title, Human-Centered Shaping of Cross-Cultural Understanding. Until we find a symbiosis, common understanding different cultures, but deeply, we will design technologies based on one cultural tradition. And this is so brittle. If you get rid of this one, this tradition is so brittle. Anybody can hack it. It's so brittle, if you don't sustain it by spending huge amount of money, huge amount of intellect, it will break down. And one day, it will be unsustainable. So we have to put the 3rd circle, the human in the loop, just to keep the effective system going. So that was the reason I chose the title of my talk, that we have to deeply understand the culture tradition. And then we talk about diversity. Then we talk about harmonization. Then we talk about sustainability. Then we talk about designing system. And my feeling is that here the artists, musicians, and people from the theater had to play a crucial role, not to become computer scientists. You know what happened to social scientists when they became social science? When they become social scientists, now all social scientists are computer scientists. And I would plea to the artists, the designers, architects, not to become computer scientists. Let computer scientists become artists. Let them change it. And debate should be that it is in their own interest, because they are following a very dangerous, brittle line, which is not sustainable at the long term. So that's basically, now I have to go straight. This one? Yep. Now, I think very briefly, humans and machines, I must explain the definition of human-machine symbiosis. Humans have judgment, they have knowledge, they have ambiguity, they are uncertain, they are creative, they are ingenious. Machines can only calculate and store data. Whatever people may think, intelligent system, that's the only capacity machines have. So we have to find the somehow symbiosis. What best humans can do, they should do. What best machines can do, they should do, but not at the cost of each other. Next one, please. No, I think I'm going to go next. We can go to the next one. Right. I think here comes my motivation, why I'm interested in the human-centered research tradition. What is symbiosis? When you look at symbiosis, you believe in plurality. You believe in valorization, which means making the best of differences. Now, this is the European Commission language. Every research project has to believe in valorization, that they have to make the best of difference. How it's done? If you have a project in which underdeveloped regions of the European Union are not involved, you have to involve them. You can't get funding until you involve the underdeveloped regions. So that's how harmonization takes place. Social shaping of technology. Now, this is important. If we are designers of technologies, we have to ask 3 questions. Is it technologically possible? If it is it desirable? Is it socially desirable? And if it's socially desirable, then we have to ask the question, is this technological system socially sustainable? That means, can society sustain this system? Can the system contribute to society so that the whole technology and society can be sustained? Only if the answer to these 3 questions is yes, then you start designing technology. But unfortunately, people only ask the first question. And you hear the computer scientists, people in artificial and cognitive science, always saying, it is possible, we'll do it. That's not whether it's socially desirable. So that's the human-centered mantra of human-centered movement. If the scientists in Europe believe in this human-centered movement, they're involved in it, then they all have to ask these 3 questions. If the answer is no, no technology. No point designing technology. So that's basically the next one. Now, this is to argue the case that human-centered group is not against technology, but only wants to shape technology. Now, you can think about here the objective knowledge or tacit knowledge. You can think about the machine and the human. And you can argue the case. Basically, there's no change. We just sit back and don't use technology. This is one possibility. The other argument was, well, we don't want to do technology, only the minimum possible technology. So that's an argument. And this is the die-hard computer scientist argument. Hang on. If you can solve problems by technology, what's the point having humans in the loop? We can automate it. We can design systems. We can design university system which people can just sit at home and learn about it. We can design insurance systems, social security system. People can have their checks transferred separately. You can have banks. That means you started from the idea that technology can do it. But the consequences, then you start designing all these systems where technology can do it. Can you imagine? You get rid of the human judgment, you get rid of the human ingenuity, you get rid of the human knowledge, you just have one simple data and facts. So you design that technology. But there's an alternative way. Why don't we design technologies which support human knowledge, human dimension, society at the same time, and society then contributes to design new technology, so both benefit. So that was the thesis of human-centered system, that we must design technology which contributes to the tacit dimension of knowledge, and tacit dimension of knowledge through experience helps the technology. So that is basically is the thesis of the human-centered argument. And that is called machines with purpose. So I'm just going to just one more slide and that's it. No. No, carry on. Straight. Yeah, oh, good. Okay. One back, I think. Yes, this is just a Italian concept of the culture of the artificial. I did explain you have a human world, you have technological world. And if you actually design technology in the world, which is separate from the society and this, is create new world. You can design technology which combines the benefits, both human knowledge and the technological knowledge. That's it. Thanks.
Does anybody have questions for Karamjit?
Okay, this idea of it being human, for this to be human-centered, why is it that you think that if people that are designing these things, that somehow in their design, their humanness doesn't reflect in some kind of a complex system that still has that reflection? Why do you think that just once you make a system, people get out of it?
I think because we do believe, as scientists, that we must design most efficient, cost-effective system. That's the heart of our belief. They must be most efficient, they must be cost-effective. Now, if you look at the evaluation of these systems from that objective, then what are the evaluation parameters? Quantified. Have you ever seen a computer scientist who say, look, my system is good because it's lovely, a lot of people can play with this? People will say it's a democratic, but when you ask them, what is democratic about internet? People will say, it has fast access. So many millions of people have access. At the end, because having started with the idea of cost effectiveness as an economic proposition, there's no way out. You have to now justify it on the same ground. And once you start justifying, then you have to start justifying on the objectivity of knowledge. You can't then go back and say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to justify my system on cultural ground, on tacit dimension of knowledge. You're too late.
Well, but isn't there one possible outcome is that you first get to think of what's possible,
yes,
and then everybody throws it out and you build up all these systems that are not really wonderful. But there would be part of the evolution that you realize that some of them are really good, some of them not very good, and they would distill eventually into a system that sort of the human consciousness would prevail to what would be best for all.
Wonderful if it happens in practice. It will be wonderful if you can actually design system with the people, involve them, and then experiment with the people. But how many systems are continue to be experiment with the people? They have been experiment for people, not with people. You can see these scientists actually designing the system, designing the questionnaire, going to interview people, and who they interview? Normally the managers, normally the functioner, who already believe in that tradition. So basically, either we say we have to develop a new type of statistics. Let's do it. In fact, Boston University, Boston Business School is actually now involved in a huge project with the Seva group, the biggest women group in the world, in India, to develop a new statistics called qualitative statistics. Is still starting because everybody is scared that if you look at the developing country development from the quantitative point of view, we had it.
I was just curious in terms of this human-centered approach, what criteria you would begin to use for determining desirability or sustainability?
It's again, it's not something which is gospel. You have to have the people with you in collaboration, and they design. But there are fundamental principles. What is socially desirable? You can say, if it contributes to the health, welfare of people, does it contribute to the disadvantaged people? Does it contribute to this? Does it sustain the not only access, but collaboration of people? That's, again, up to the people, the society in which you live. So you can't have, so that's the question has been asked again and again. You have principles that all these three questions have to be asked. And it's wonderful, when you ask these three questions, you actually have a wonderful debate. People collaborate. So I suppose, I'm afraid there is no one single answer. Answer has to be found when you start discovering what is behind this question. It's somehow one would say this is cop-out. It's very easy for a lot of computer scientists to tell us it's a cop-out. We know when we design the system, we can say the speed of this will be, capacity of this will be, there's so many people. The question is, so what? So what? You can have 10 million people using the one internet, so what? Tell me, have you changed the lifestyle of a poor village in India? You may have given the laptop. Has health changed? Has poverty changed? Has anything happened? But if it does happen, which in certain cases does happen, then you can say, yes, we can use this technology for benefit of people. Then, of course, you can justify from the human-centered point of view. But from technological point of view, I have neither I enter into the debate, because they are always right. Because they set the parameters, they use the parameter to evaluate. They can't go wrong. But the human-centered people who are humanists have to be fuzzy by their nature, because we're dealing with the cultures, we're dealing with societies. Because by definition, they're ambiguous, they're fuzzy, they're uncertain.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Karamjit.
Thanks.
Okay. Just need a couple more minutes for Marcos.